I always believed that marriage was built on trust, that when you commit to someone, you stand by them no matter what. I thought I had that with my wife, Marlene. For years, I convinced myself we were happy, even when the little things started to feel off. When she stopped laughing at my jokes, when her late nights at work became more frequent, when the warmth in her eyes faded into something distant. I should have seen the signs earlier, but love makes you blind, or maybe I just didn't want to admit that the woman I built a life with was slipping away from me. The truth hit me in the most unexpected way. It wasn't a dramatic confession, no secret message found by accident. It was the way she looked at me one evening as she packed her overnight bag, telling me she was heading to her friend's house for the weekend. Her voice was casual, her movements routine, but I knew. I just knew. "You're staying with Hannah again?" I asked, my voice steady though my chest felt tight. She barely glanced at me. "Yeah, we're having a girls' weekend." A lie. I could hear it in the way she avoided my eyes, in the way she over-explained. I wanted to ask more, to push, to demand honesty, but a cold realization settled over me. If she wanted to lie, she would, and if she was lying, it meant something was already broken. So instead of pleading or arguing, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. "Have fun," I said, walking past her toward the kitchen. I didn't look back, didn't try to catch her reaction, but in that moment, I knew this wasn't my loss. It was hers, because while she was out doing whatever she thought she could get away with, I was making my own plans. Plans that would change everything. And she had no idea what was coming. The moment she walked out that door, something inside me shifted. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter, staring at the empty space where she had just been. There was no explosion of rage, no gut-wrenching heartbreak, just silence, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to chase. I wasn't going to be the man she expected me to be, the one who would sit at home waiting while she did whatever she wanted. I sat down at the table and took a deep breath. This was my turning point. I could already see it so clearly. Marlene was testing me. She wanted to see if I'd break, if I'd lash out, if I'd crumble into a pathetic mess and beg her to stay. But she underestimated me. For years, I had built my life around her. I had made compromises, adjusted my habits, and swallowed my pride to keep our marriage afloat. And for what? So she could slowly push me into the background while she built a secret life behind my back? No. I refused to be the desperate husband clinging to someone who had already let go of me. That night, I didn't text her. I didn't call. I went about my evening as if nothing had changed. I made dinner, steak, medium rare, just the way I liked it. I poured myself a drink and watched TV, completely undisturbed. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. The next morning, I woke up early, more refreshed than I had been in months. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I spent the day getting things in order, sorting through finances, making a few quiet phone calls, putting my own plans into motion. If Marlene was walking away from this marriage, then I was going to make sure she walked straight into a reality she wasn't expecting. I thought about the moment she would return home, expecting things to be just as she left them. She would walk through that door with her usual detached air, maybe acting just a little guilty, but confident that I hadn't caught on. And I would be there waiting, not with anger, not with accusations, but with something far worse for her: indifference. By the time the sun began to set, I was ready. The house was spotless, every detail perfectly in place. The air felt charged with anticipation, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wasn't just preparing for her return. I was setting the stage for the moment she would realize she had made the biggest mistake of her life. And when she walked through that door, suitcase in hand, I simply smiled. "Welcome back, Marlene," I said, my voice even. "Did you have fun?" The way her expression faltered for just a second told me everything I needed to know. She had no idea what was coming. The moment Marlene stepped through the door, I could tell she expected something different. Maybe she thought I'd be sulking on the couch, nursing a half-empty bottle of whiskey, waiting to demand answers. Maybe she expected an argument, accusations, a dramatic confrontation where I'd beg her to tell me the truth. She probably even rehearsed her fake excuses in the car ride home. But instead, she found me calm, collected, standing in the kitchen like nothing had changed. Her suitcase rolled in behind her with a quiet thud as she took a hesitant step forward. "Hey," she said, her voice oddly cautious. "You're home early." I looked at her with an easy smile. "Never left." That threw her off. Her lips parted slightly, like she was expecting me to say more. When I didn't, she shifted uncomfortably, as if the script she had in her head wasn't going the way she planned. She set her bag down by the door and forced a casual tone. "It was a good weekend. Hannah and I had a great time." I nodded, still watching her. "That's nice." Silence stretched between us. She had expected a different version of me, but she wasn't getting him. No demands, no accusations, nothing for her to counteract with more lies. And the longer I stood there, the more uneasy she became. Marlene wasn't stupid. She could sense that something had shifted, but she couldn't put her finger on what. She gave me a quick once-over, searching for some kind of clue. When she found nothing, she forced a laugh and turned toward the bedroom, dragging her suitcase behind her. "I need to unpack," she said over her shoulder. I let her go, let her think she was safe for now. Because what was coming next, that was the part she would never see coming. Over the next few days, I kept things exactly the same. I greeted her the same way I always did, asked the usual questions about her day, gave her nothing to hold on to, nothing to argue against. But something changed in the way she looked at me. At first, it was confusion, then suspicion, like she could feel something moving beneath the surface but couldn't figure out what. She started watching me more closely. She'd randomly ask, "Is everything okay?" And every time, I'd smile and say, "Of course." That answer drove her crazy because deep down, she knew something was different. One night, she slipped into bed beside me, hesitating before she spoke. "You've been acting weird lately." I glanced at her, pretending to be surprised. "Weird? How?" She frowned. "I don't know. You're just different. You're not mad at me or anything, right?" That was the moment I knew. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about herself. I turned on my side, resting my head against my hand as I looked at her. "Why would I be mad, Marlene?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again. She didn't have an answer for that. If she insisted too much, she might slip up. If she let it go, she'd be left with this growing unease that she couldn't shake. Either way, I had already won. I watched her turn onto her back, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. For the first time in our marriage, the power had shifted completely, and she felt it. She just didn't know that I was already several steps ahead. That weekend trip she thought she had gotten away with? It wasn't just another lie I let slide. While she was gone, I had started putting pieces together. I had gone through the finances. I had checked phone records. I had gone further back than she ever expected me to. I found hotel receipts, cash withdrawals, text messages that were just vague enough to confirm everything I needed to know. And now I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. Marlene thought she had all the control. She thought she could string me along until she was ready to leave on her own terms. She had no idea that I had already decided how the story would end. Marlene thought she was in control. I could see it in the way she carried herself, the way she walked through the house as if nothing had changed. She was playing the long game, testing the waters, figuring out how much she could get away with before pulling the trigger on whatever plan she had cooked up. Maybe she thought she'd ease me into the idea of separation, string me along until she was ready to leave on her own terms. Maybe she was waiting for me to break first so she could play the victim. Too bad for her, I was already 5 steps ahead. I let her think she had the upper hand, and she soaked it up like a sponge. She became more relaxed, more confident in her deception. At first, she tried to act cautious, watching me carefully, looking for cracks in my composure. But when she found none, she let her guard down. She went back to sneaking late-night text messages when she thought I was asleep, leaving the house under the pretense of running errands, dressing just a little too nicely for coffee with the girls. And I let her, because while she was out there thinking she was untouchable, I was making sure every move she made was documented. I had quietly installed a tracking app on her phone, nothing invasive, just enough to confirm what I already knew. I had gone through our shared bank statements, finding expenses that couldn't be explained away. The receipts I found weren't just for hotel rooms. There were dinners, little shopping sprees, weekend getaways I had never heard about. She was living a double life, and she thought I was too blind to see it. One afternoon, she was in the shower when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't have even looked, but I had already seen enough to know that whoever was messaging her wasn't a friend from work. I glanced at the screen, just a single text preview. "Can't wait to see you again this weekend." That was all I needed. By the time she got out of the shower, a towel wrapped around her body, steam rolling out from the bathroom, I was already sitting on the bed, casually flipping through the TV channels. I could feel her eyes on me, assessing, wondering if I had seen her phone light up. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She hesitated before grabbing her phone, quickly swiping the screen and typing out a response, thinking she was being slick. I just smiled to myself. Let her think she's getting away with it. But she wasn't just playing me. She was playing herself, because I had already set my plan in motion. I started moving my assets, separating bank accounts, making quiet financial decisions that would leave her with nothing when the time came. I gathered every piece of proof I needed, ensuring that if things got ugly, I would have the upper hand. And the best part? She still had no clue. She thought she was on top of the world, that she had successfully built herself an escape plan without consequences. She didn't realize that I was the one holding the door open for her exit. And when the time came, she would regret every choice she made. It was fascinating, watching Marlene live in her own little bubble of delusion. She thought she was outsmarting me, that I was still the clueless husband blindly trusting every excuse she threw my way. In her mind, she was orchestrating a slow, clean getaway, one where she could keep her options open, secure her comfort, and then walk away when she was ready. She had no idea that I had already pulled the rug out from under her. I had everything in place. My money was moved, my exit strategy secured. She still thought we shared joint finances, but in reality, I had quietly shifted our accounts, leaving just enough behind to avoid suspicion. Every paper trail was accounted for. She might have thought she was leading the game, but she didn't realize she was playing by my rules now. She was getting bolder. I could see it in the way she carried herself, more confident, more dismissive of me. She stopped pretending to care about my plans, stopped checking in on me when she was out. And she had a new habit now, coming home just a little later than she used to, with a flimsy excuse that she barely put effort into. One night, she waltzed in at almost midnight, a little too dressed up for a work event. I was sitting on the couch, casually scrolling through my phone when she walked in. She hesitated when she saw me awake, but then quickly covered it up with a forced smile. "Didn't think you'd still be up," she said, setting her purse down a little too carefully. I looked at her, studying her for a moment before shrugging. "Just wasn't tired." She shifted awkwardly, waiting, expecting me to ask where she'd been, to challenge her lie. But I didn't give her that satisfaction. I just stretched and stood up, letting out a casual yawn. "I'm heading to bed," I said as I walked past her. She watched me go, and I could feel the weight of her confusion trailing after me. She expected a fight. She expected an argument. But all she got was my indifference. And that's when I knew she was starting to panic. The next few days were almost comical. She started paying more attention to me, as if she was suddenly remembering that she had a husband. Little gestures. Asking how my day was, offering to make dinner, initiating conversations she hadn't bothered with in months. It was an act, of course. She was fishing for information, trying to figure out if something had shifted. I played along, letting her believe she was slowly regaining control. I let her sit in the illusion that she was fixing whatever damage she thought she might have done. But in reality, I was simply waiting for the perfect moment. The moment where she'd realize she had walked right into the trap she had set for me. The moment where she'd understand, too late, that she had gambled everything and lost. The shift was almost imperceptible at first, like a barely noticeable crack in glass that would soon spiderweb into destruction. Marlene was growing uneasy, and I could see it in the way she carried herself. Her confidence, once so unshakable, was faltering. She would glance at me longer than usual, searching for signs, trying to gauge if I knew something. And yet I gave her nothing. The silence was suffocating for her. I never confronted her, never accused her, never raised my voice. I treated her like nothing had changed, like she was still my wife and I was still the same predictable husband she had been quietly pulling away from. But the truth was, she wasn't pulling away anymore. She was clinging, and that was exactly what I wanted. One morning, as she sat across from me at the kitchen table, pretending to read an email on her phone, I noticed her thumb nervously tapping against the screen. It was a tell. She did that when she was deep in thought, when she was overanalyzing something. "You're quiet this morning," she finally said, forcing casualness into her tone. I sipped my coffee, looking up at her with an easy smile. "Just thinking." Her expression tensed for a fraction of a second before she forced a laugh. "About what?" "About us." She froze just for a second, but I saw it. Her grip on her phone tightened, her breathing stilled. And in that moment, I knew she was scrambling for an answer. Was this the moment? Was I finally confronting her? Did I know? Should she confess something or keep lying? She had played this game for months, weaving a web of half-truths and deceit. But now the spider had caught a glimpse of the approaching flame. She swallowed carefully, setting her phone down. "What do you mean?" I leaned back in my chair, stretching slightly before meeting her gaze. "I've just been reflecting a lot lately, thinking about our marriage, about what really matters." She was trying to read me now, trying to figure out if I was leading her into a trap. "That's good, right?" I smiled again. "Yeah, it really is." She nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. If I wasn't fighting, if I wasn't questioning her, then maybe I didn't know anything at all. Maybe she still had time to keep her secret safe, to slip away cleanly when she was ready. And that's why she didn't see what was coming next. That evening, I set the stage. I told her I had something special planned for us, that I wanted to take her out for dinner, just the two of us. She hesitated. She wasn't used to this kind of attention anymore. She had spent so much time investing in her double life that the idea of reconnecting with me felt foreign. But she agreed. After all, if she refused, it might look suspicious. She got dressed, put on her makeup, and for a brief moment, she looked like the woman I had married, the woman I had trusted. But I knew better now. The restaurant was perfect, elegant, intimate, the kind of place we used to go before everything changed. As we sat down, I saw her relax slightly, like she had convinced herself that whatever paranoia she had been feeling was misplaced. We talked, small talk, nothing too deep. She laughed at my jokes again, touched my hand like she used to, but the entire time, I was watching her, studying every flicker of emotion in her eyes. And then, just as she was about to take a sip of her wine, I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table toward her. She frowned, setting her glass down before looking at the screen. And then, in an instant, her entire face drained of color. She saw everything. Screenshots of messages, bank statements, hotel receipts. Every single detail of her betrayal laid out in front of her. Undeniable, inescapable. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled, eyes darting from one piece of evidence to the next, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. She looked up at me, her mouth opening, but no words came out. I leaned forward slightly, my expression calm, composed. "You thought I didn't know, didn't you?" Silence. And then, barely above a whisper, she finally spoke. "How long have you known?" I tilted my head, considering my answer before smiling. "Long enough." She wasn't expecting this. She had rehearsed all the possible scenarios. The fights, the screaming matches, the tears. But she wasn't prepared for this version of me. The version that had already accepted the truth, that had already moved past the pain and into something far more dangerous. Indifference. I picked up my glass, swirling the wine inside before taking a slow sip. "You don't have to explain," I said, my voice almost kind. "Really, I just thought it was time for you to know that I know." Her hands were still shaking. "What are you going to do?" I smiled. "Nothing." She blinked, confused. "Nothing?" I nodded. "That's right. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to fight for someone who's already checked out. I just wanted you to know that I saw through all of it." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, to defend herself, to spin some desperate lie, but she knew it wouldn't work. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. "I already took care of everything," I continued. "The accounts, the house, the paperwork. It's all done." She stiffened. "What do you mean, done?" I met her gaze, holding it steady. "I mean, you wanted a way out, Marlene, so I gave you one." And with that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her sitting there, surrounded by the remnants of the life she had so carelessly destroyed. She thought I'd beg her to stay. She thought she could have it all. Her double life, her secrets, her control over me. But instead, I gave her an easy exit, and she instantly regretted every single choice that led her to this moment. I walked out of the restaurant, but I didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, I stood just outside, out of sight, giving her time to process everything. I imagined her sitting there, staring at the evidence on my phone, her mind racing in 100 different directions. She had spent so much time weaving lies, building her separate life, believing she had everything under control. Now she was trapped in the very web she had spun. A minute passed, then another. I heard nothing but the soft hum of the city around me, the distant chatter of restaurant patrons, the occasional honk from a passing car. I checked my watch. It had only been 5 minutes, but I knew what was coming next. Right on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I let it ring a few times before answering, keeping my voice calm. "Yes." Her breath hitched on the other end. "Where are you?" I glanced back at the restaurant. Through the large windows, I could see her sitting at the table, hunched over, gripping the phone like a lifeline. Her face was pale, her shoulders tense. "Outside," I said simply. A pause. Then her voice cracked. "Please come back." There it was, the first crack in her armor. The realization that I wasn't playing by the rules she had expected. She had braced herself for a fight, for anger, for a desperate plea to fix things, but she had never prepared for indifference. I took a slow breath. "Why?" "Because we need to talk," she said quickly, her words laced with panic. "This isn't what you think." I let out a short laugh. "Marlene, don't insult me." Silence. I could picture her now, closing her eyes, trying to gather herself, searching for the right angle to take. She had always been good at manipulation, at twisting situations in her favor. But there was no strategy that could save her this time. I heard her swallow hard. "Just, please come back inside. We can work through this." There it was again. Not an apology, not regret, just an attempt to regain control. She still thought she could talk her way out of this, smooth over the cracks, convince me to forget what I had seen. I leaned against the brick wall of the restaurant, staring at the sky, letting her words settle between us. "Work through what, exactly?" I asked, my voice even. "The months of lying? The nights you spent with someone else while I was at home trusting you? Or are we supposed to work through the fact that you weren't even planning to tell me the truth?" A sharp breath on the other end. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Then tell me what it was like," I challenged. Another long silence. Then, finally, the truth I had been waiting for, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to hear her say it. "I made a mistake," she admitted, barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes, letting those words settle. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I regret everything." Just, "I made a mistake." A phrase designed to minimize, to shift responsibility away from her and onto the abstract. "Mistakes are things you fix," I said after a moment. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Over and over again. I cut her off before she could say anything else. "You wanted a way out, Marlene, so I gave you one. Take it." The silence stretched longer this time. I could almost hear her heartbeat through the phone. This wasn't how she thought this conversation would go. She had assumed I'd cling, that I'd fight for her, that I'd be the one begging for answers. But instead, I was the one closing the door in her face. Finally, her voice broke. Is this really it? I opened my eyes, staring at the city lights in the distance. Yeah, I said quietly. This is it. Then I hung up, and just like that, the illusion shattered. The moment I hung up, a strange sensation washed over me, one I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. For months, maybe even years, I had been carrying the weight of a marriage that no longer existed. I had fought to hold on to something that she had already let go of, twisting myself into knots to avoid seeing the truth. But now the weight was gone. I took one last look through the restaurant window. Marlene was still sitting there, her phone clutched in her hand, staring blankly at the screen. Her carefully constructed world had just collapsed in an instant, and for the first time she had no control over what came next. That was her problem now, not mine. I turned away and walked down the street, breathing in the night air. The city felt different, brighter somehow, like I was seeing it for the first time. It hit me then. This was the first step of something new. Not just an ending, but a beginning. By the time I got home, I had already made my decision. There was nothing left for me in this house. Nothing but the remnants of a life I no longer wanted. I had planned for this moment carefully, and now all I had to do was follow through. The next morning I packed a bag. Not because I was running away, but because I was walking towards something better. I had options, opportunities one had put off for too long because I had been too busy trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. But now the storm had passed. I could finally move forward. As I zipped up my bag, my phone buzzed. A message from Marlene. We can fix this. Please, let's just talk. I stared at the screen for a moment, then smiled. She finally realized what she had lost. But it was too late. I had already moved on. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I deleted the message without responding, grabbed my bag, and stepped out the door. The future was waiting, and this time it was mine to shape. And as I walked away, I felt nothing but peace.